Good day to you. This is Anagalactic bringing you another science presentation in cosmic geometry. You can find that on the syllabus of any university. Cosmic geometry, everyone's signing up for it. You may have never heard those two words used together. First of all, because cosmic, a little bit overused, and geometry practically unused. But today we're going to be presenting cosmic geometry from the point of view of someone on Earth. You'll have to project yourself into this situation. It's called a frame of reference. Imagine that you're standing on a spherical surface. I know, but Einstein did this all the time. And we're not going to be doing like light bouncing off of mirrors from trains going at 99% of the speed of light. That's not the nature of this excursion into... I'm just going to freshen up a bit. I'll be right back. Good day to you. This is Anagalactic bringing you another science presentation. I hope I didn't scare you. It is Halloween though. This is October 31st, the traditional day of All Hallows Eve, which has some kind of strange religious significance behind it. But I was out on our main drag today, a one-way street going in front of a coffee shop that says in capital letters on the building, coffee. Chico is not what you'd call a sprawling metropolis, but today it was Hades. I'm allowed to say that on Halloween. It was Hades driving around because there's people crossing everywhere. Everyone's out today. It's a very nice warm day. I've had my fill of outdoors. I can't stay outside too long because I have asthma from the campfire. But whatever. I finally got my parking spot, which is at the edge of the city where they don't charge money. Although I probably wouldn't have been charged money, but I actually don't know, and I don't take a chance because I can't afford a ticket. So I parked over by the bank. They'd even left a note, like, don't park here. And I'm like, I think I'll take the chance and continue parking here rather than get a ticket. So what are they going to do, leave another note? Don't park here or we'll close your account. Hasn't happened yet. So I'm out there sipping my coffee and watching all these people going by, little tots, girls dressed like angels, boys dressed like dragons and characters from superhero stuff that I don't really understand because it's all technological now. But you can tell they're dressed up. This is not what they would wear to school normally. And the mothers are dressed like fairy godmothers and the fathers are dressed like, Dumbo or something. And I just had a blast. I just thought, life isn't as bad as I'm cutting it out to be on all my lectures, which are not supposed to be lectures, but lately I've kind of been lecturing like, the situation in the world today is really affecting science. It's like, it doesn't really go with my ethic. I somehow got turned to the dark side of the force. It's like, this shit going on in Ukraine, I'm just talking about worldly things, has something to do with the mathematicians being corrupt, and I'm like looking at this. I look at all my videos before I publish them and then never make any changes and just say fuck everybody. This is just like, in this introduction, there's, oh, by the way, there you go, look at that. I have all my teeth. Well, I don't have all my teeth. One of them split. It was one of the most painful things I ever experienced. And then for $1,000, this doctor put in a tooth, and I'm like, how long will this tooth last before, it comes unglued? He said, your jaw could fall apart, but that tooth is never coming out. It's like, he made it sound like all the rest of your teeth could be just smashed out of your mouth, but this one is not going anywhere. And I'm like, I'll have my parents pay you. They actually did this. I was homeless at the time. This wasn't that long ago. It's only like 10 years ago. I've led a very odd life, but I have wonderful parents. And I say have because I still have them, although you're not going to find them on Earth. Which leads us into a very interesting perception, which we're going to get into today indirectly, is like, what what actually does happen to you after you die? It's like this unbelievable existential paradox, which, Woody Allen has his way of facing it. Mother Teresa has her way of facing it. She's like, I just want to help the people who are innocent and oppressed and diseased and cast out, and I'm just going to just hang out with them and feed them and make them feel better. And she's a saint. I don't know how you can do better. But then there's Woody Allen, who lives in New York, which is like, you can't help anybody in New York. They would turn on you, and you would eventually be consumed. So, he has a different way of addressing things, which I was more raised under Woody Allen's influence than Mother Teresa. I knew of them both, but you couldn't really watch Mother Teresa doing her stuff, and it wasn't that entertaining, I would think. She's in the black hole of Calcutta or some place that you don't want to ever see. And she just, she's a Catholic saint. And I'm like, well, the Catholics are pretty good people then. I'm in favor of Catholicism. But then you remember the history lessons. Well, you're confused. But whatever religion, I mean, they all face the same thing. And everyone faces it. By the time you're a certain age, and it varies. And throughout life, it's more or less a continuous, progressive confrontation. It gets closer and closer. It's like, you may want to start thinking about the grave now. It's like, do you know where you're going to be in 1,000 years? I don't think anyone really has a clear answer. But if, there's a church with a big cross on it, which probably means space-time, this is the intersection of space with time, they might know. You see people going in on Sunday, you go in and you listen, and it's like, if you want to go to heaven, and then they tell you what to do. I did that for 30 years, although I didn't listen to that part. I was just there to basically sing and read the Bible. I like the Bible. And I'll even tell you why. The wisdom books. And then the wisdom books, they don't really tell you about life after death. Nobody tells you about life after death. Unless you read Revelation, which I'm not going to get to here because this is not a religious, lecture. I'm not a priest. Although, actually, in the book it says, you're all priests and kings if you follow the good Lord. And I'm like, okay, but, that's not now. And they're like, you got to be in the world, but not of it. Well, that's a very difficult prepositional difference to do on a day-to-day basis. You wake up in the morning, you're like, another day, I'm going to try harder. And I'm going to be in the world. You look around, oh yeah, it's same as yesterday, but not of it. Well, you do have to shop at Safeway or somewhere, and you do have to go to a bank because you can't keep money in your mattress. There's just, you got to balance everything. You're kind of the world, You see homeless people, if you're me, homos are like, oh, you look like you don't have any more opportunities, but I'll accept you. And you just got to deal with this at all times. I just found out about the woke. I kept hearing woke. I'm going, well, my fellow Americans are not very good with grammar. But then I'm like, no, it's another meme. I got to know, or I'll never understand the jokes that the comedians are telling. So, oh, is this woke person? And I'm like, okay, he's not talking about what I did this morning. I woke. But what does this mean? I looked it up, and Wikipedia has an article on it, and I always go there first. It never has exactly the answer you want because it's written in exhaustive, they go right down to what it would normally take you 16 years even to understand what they're saying. They assume that you've been through political science 1A, 1B, 101, and then advanced. Have a master's degree in worldly politics and philosophy, and so You're going to understand this language. Well, it's an existentialist ontological reversal on the former theory of something or other. And I'm like, but what about the people with the signs, you know? What are they doing? Why are the comedians making these jokes? I want to understand so I can laugh. What does woke mean to a person? So, well, there's two sides, and I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to have to read the footnotes. I'm going to have to do research. I'm going to have to stay up at night, put on my really powerful spectacles, and just make a pot of coffee. Woke. Well, you're going to have to start with the soteriological, and then, oh, shit. And then you never do find out. That's what I've learned. And we'll be right back because I'm not ready. But, oh, you know what? Before we go, I have to straighten out I have no idea if this tie is straight or not. I don't have a woman in my life. I can't manage my finances without my wife. When I've had a wife, which was twice, both times for 10 years, no financial worries at all. She wants to. It's like, you want to handle the money? Yeah. It's like, they're surprised. Like, yeah, oh yeah. And I'm like, here you go. Here's the passwords. Here's the funds. Here's, how I fuck it up. And she's like, leave it to me. Not a problem. But then if she dies of cancer, you're like, well, I guess I'm going to go broke. And I did. I'm not going to work anymore. I worked for another 8 months, and then I thought, well, it's time to mourn. She did die of cancer. And I can't I didn't remember a single day of work. They still loved me. I'm still on the phone every day taking calls like I'm normal. And I'm still getting high marks. My supervisor's like, you're going to be the president of the company and then you'll get to spy on everybody. And I'm like, I'm not sure my heart's into it. And so then I said, I have to fly back to Ukraine to see my wife's grave because I sent her mother home with her daughter's ashes to bury her daughter's ashes where she was born in Kiev. Not at the exact spot where she was born, that would be difficult, but somewhere in the city. And they said, well, we can't give you another leave. You've already had like mourning leave or whatever leave, death leave, sick leave. She was sick, so they gave me sick leave because we forced them to. We're going to take them to court, both at her place at Blue Cross and my place at Verizon. Here's an interesting sidelight. I'm working at Verizon, right? Which at the time was called Verizon Wireless. Now they've changed their name, because I guess wireless was associated with Edward Snowden. Oh, the wireless people, like you trigger something. Oh, you're spying on us. I didn't even know that's what we were doing. We, white man, as my mother would say, I wasn't spying on them. Although, there's another story. I was in the .com scam in San Francisco when I was working to try to get my wife over on a K2 visa. And suddenly, one day, I show up, I take the train up from Redwood City, because I like the train. Because then I could just get out at Shea Stadium, or whatever they call it, AT&T Stadium, and then just walk like 3 blocks to work. It was great. We were right under the Bay Bridge. I felt like, God, I'm making $62 an hour. It's like 3 times more money than I ever made. And it was my last job as a programmer, but I was actually programming this gigantic Oracle database. And the Oracle database manager apparently was having a nervous breakdown or something. And so I'm hired to do these conversions to like Excel, and I'm like a support guy, which is what I've always been. Well, in the later stages. and I have a niche. But they had hired me for like extra reasons. This was going to go to permanent, and I found out what they had targeted me for was to take over the Oracle database manager position, which I did not covet nor envy, because I'd never seen a database like this. Well, what it was, we were tracking every single type stroke, every click, everything you do on your screen with Safari or Chrome or Firefox or whatever you use. This cartel or whatever it was, there were like 400 of us in 3 buildings in this 2-block area, and we would all come out for lunch every day and look at each other and then go back in. We knew we were doing something powerful. Well, we were doing what Edward Snowden would uncover later. This is the beginning of Google. There was no Google at that moment, but there shortly would be. Once the yuppies absconded, I guess, with the stock or whatever they did, and then it was in all the papers. And I just show up to work, and everyone's trudging around like we can't go in. They're having some big meeting. And then within days, it was in the paper, .com scam. And that was the beginning, and then, I had worked there just long enough. So I was able to fill out the notorious document that you need to fill out if you want to have a mail order bride, which is what my family actually thought this was. I fly to Ukraine twice. I moved there. I'm a missionary in Kiev because it's the only way to be near her. She was my translator as a missionary because she was with the same church that I was with. It was not the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Her mother went to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, but her daughter went to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Way over in California, I'm in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. For some reason, well, I can tell you because I thought they were Jews. I thought, maybe it's not genetic. Because they worship on Saturday, and so do the Seventh-day Adventists, and I thought, well, my DNA says I can't be a Jew. So, I'm out of luck. Well, no, and my first wife noticed this, and she knew my husband studies the Bible every day. To please him, I think I'm going to love God and Jesus. And she did, and she said, let's go to this church that I think you'll like. And I'm like, sure, I'll show up and teach them something and then leave. Like Elijah. It's really, I was a poet or something. And so we go, and I'm like, oh, you worship on Saturday. And I'm thinking, Jew. I still have a shot. And I'm going, well, I'm going to do it my wife. And we actually got baptized. And on the day of the baptism, the whole congregation is there. There's big bathtub. I'm not kidding you. It's like, a hot tub that they had just dragged out and filled with warm water. And I got baptized, but my pastor noticed, and he mentioned this to me later. He said, your eyes were beet red. And I was like, yeah, because I smoke the holy anointing oil every goddamn Saturday. Yeah, like it says in the wisdom books, you should stay high on this stuff because God says, don't even try to duplicate this with drugs. This grows in the ground. You make oil out of it. If you get it on your fingers, you'll see angels. And I didn't go that far, but, I'm in modern industrialized America. If we saw angels, we would not admit it to ourselves. We'd be like, well, I'm high. And so that's just a hallucination. But I need to get some fluids. Like I told you, I'm sick, I'm dying. I need sympathy. No, I'm doing anything now to get attention. It's like almost too late. I got to get this message out. We need consensual, attention to what I've discovered, this new geometry that explains physics. And it's like, if you're tuning in for the first time, you're probably like, yeah, I think we can just... Well, I'll be back with more. And don't miss what I'm about to say. I'll certainly try not to miss it. Because it's redshift and the flight of the photon and how we see and consciousness and reality and space-time. We're going to do it all, but you're not going to be confused anymore. And that is science. You're supposed to understand the universe, not just repeat what the professors say. Oh, you want to understand the universe and you've come to the big boys. It's about time because we're all set to teach you. First of all, it's expanding. And you're like, well, that has to be true because I never would have thought of that because it makes no fucking sense. And they just reel you in like a marlin. Yeah. The universe is expanding. It's a big bang from a fiery plasma dot that just, makes quantum mush. And where did it come from before that? Yeah, we'll get to that. You're not intelligent enough. I can't go just listen It's expanding, and I'm thinking, yeah, I understand. Amoebas, monkeys, and humans. This is just fiery dot, plasma, and expand. It's same thing. Propaganda, but I have nowhere else to turn. You look anywhere, it's like, can we start like somewhere rational? What is the universe? I had to do it all myself. And that actually is science, and that's how I learned. We'll be right. Good day to you. We're back with the real thing this time. Okay. I do like to give bracketing information, but on Halloween day, in the expansive mood that I'm in and so close to the grave, it's not a good idea for me to do that anymore. I need to just get this to you so you have it. What is it? Well, we're going to talk about redshift and imaginary space, which may not seem to be related. They're the two things that I promised to tell you about, but they actually are related, and that's why it's taken me about a week since the last presentation to get around to doing this. I've been thinking about it because I want to give you real science. But what is that? Now, since I began these lectures, one of my main topics or threads has been the topic of what is really science. And my contention is that science is vast and it has many departments. Now, mathematics is a department, but so is philosophy. Not the typical philosophy, but where philosophy impinges on science or vice versa, because we are human and we do need to deal with two sides of life. The rational side is indeed separate, but not independent. We're looking for answers. Now, in technology, that's of course rigorously controlled. And that's a valid aspect of science. Technology affects our lives vastly. That's a vast understatement, so I'm sure that you accept that and understand. Excuse the reflection off of these glasses. These are my reading glasses. What we're attempting to do in my series is to get understanding. Now, technology is a certain kind of understanding, but it's not the kind of understanding that a human needs. You need it in order to build what you want, whether it is a boiler or an engine or a laser or a reactor. You need to be very, very precise and knowledgeable and have understanding of the structure of what you're trying to build so that you build it correctly so it will endure the tests of actual physics. Like when you fire up that engine to try to get into outer space ahead of the Soviet Union, it might blow up. And I think you know, if you know anything about the history of the Mercury program that preceded the Apollo program, it did not look very good at first. The Soviets were having a good deal of success in getting into outer space ahead of us, which alarmed the military, of course, because that platform is higher than a B-52 can fly. And with thermonuclear power, that is the H-bomb, the hydrogen fusion bomb, 1,000 times more powerful, pound for pound, than an atomic explosion. If the Soviets were to get a space platform before the United States, that could mean the end of the world. And to show that they meant business, the Soviets detonated in the year 1960, when I was 6 years old, the most powerful explosion that's ever been witnessed on the face of the Earth that was man-made. Krakatoa was bigger, but that wasn't man-made. And that was called the Tsar Bomba, which I've given several lectures on, which I'll have links if you want to look those up. Just leave a comment. Anytime I mention something which I've covered in my past 350 lectures, and you want to know more, but you're not sure where to sift through these unindexed videos, just leave a comment, and then I'll look it up. And I might have a difficult time finding it But if you're interested, that's why I'm here. I don't ask for money. I don't ask you to press like or subscribe. Although pressing like can help in terms of other people finding the same lectures. Now, today, we're in a wrap up series because I've covered most of what I wanted to cover as far as the nitty gritty and, of course, the larger and and closing space of why are we doing this at all? Well, that does get to some philosophical concerns. I take the shortcut. I like the Occam's razor. That is a valid scientific approach, although sometimes your razor is not going to get as fine a cut as you want. But you look for simplicity. That is always the right way to go until you can't. And then the water has to build up and flow around, somehow get past the obstacle, because you're no longer able to simplify. Well, at the so-called cutting edge of science, by definition, it's no longer easy. It's no longer simple because we're probing further. We have to guess as we push the envelope. Now, I've narrowed that down for us because of a logical reduction in terms of you investing your time to get what you need from science. You do not want the earth sciences or the mathematical sciences or the quasi-sciences such as sociology, history, or psychology. But we also don't want biology or geology. We can't totally leave those out, and I've covered where we are forced to face those as well, because science faces all of reality, and it all fits. But there are two surfaces to choose from immediately, a binary split. Earth sciences, which is what we can do experiments with on Earth. This would be basically looking in towards molecular structure, just physical phenomena that occur on the face of the Earth. Thermodynamics, electrodynamics we can access. But there's one other surface, which is everything over our heads, really beyond the atmosphere, but you can see it's a spectrum. This is not a light spectrum, but a spectrum means it's a continuous thing, that it's hard to know where one part leaves off and another begins. In the use of the word heaven, very quickly heaven becomes the heavens, because birds fly in heaven by one definition of heaven, because that is over our heads where men have been unable to reach in the past. Well, in the modern age, we are in the 21st century, but since about the middle of the 20th century, air flight has become common, up to about 30,000 feet, but there are planes that go higher, jets go higher, and now, of course, we've penetrated the atmosphere itself and even landed men on the moon. We also have probes that have gone as far as Saturn, Uranus, and beyond, Neptune, and then outside the solar system. So we have penetrated solar system space. That would be heaven, but that's, again, just a level. The atmosphere is the lower level of the heavens, and then out to the moon, you could say that that is the sphere of the Earth, and that actually has a physical meaning. But then the sun is the major generator of the field of gravity into which all the planets find their circular niche at specific distances, which very much fascinated Kepler. But then we recently, that is exactly a century ago this month, officially got the measurement that Edwin Powell Hubble took of a Cepheid star in Andromeda, which proved once and for all what the spectroscopists had already fairly much knew for sure, almost for certain, that Andromeda was outside this star system. But we do measure it officially, in a sense, from Edwin Powell Hubble's discovery of the Cepheid star, which is a variable star. It varies in luminosity on a calculable periodic rate, which, because we know the typical size of a Cepheid star from other discoveries made in local space, stellar space, because we know the typical size of a Cepheid star based on its light curve, that identifies it as a certain size star and a certain luminosity, such that when Edwin Powell Hubble discovered this variable star in Andromeda with a sufficiently powerful telescope, he was able to get a parallax. You could use that word. It's not exactly the right word, but it's a means of getting an accurate distance to that object to see if it's outside of our star system. Nobody was sure until Powell confirmed it. That is a level of heaven called galactic space. Now, you could say that our star, Sol, which we call the sun, being a typical star, in fact, a main sequence star, a yellow star of typical size, that star has a range of gravity, and what's outside of it is an extremely long distance to the next star. And stars are much more distant from each other at their scale than galaxies are from themselves. When you look at a star field and you plot the distances between the stars, they're on the order of light years apart, which, considering their size, is impossibly far. We cannot even conceive yet of traveling to the stars. It's literally impossible. Now, because of an instinctive drive or instinctual drive of the human race, which means every individual feels this to one extent or another, depending on their specific personality profile, I guess you could put it that way, we know that we could. And even if we look at the charts, well, what do we need to do to get to the next star? You're going to find out that you can't. We'll never get to the next star. That's my opinion. That could change if the human race were somehow to rectify itself to survive for another 1,000 years, perhaps. Within 1,000 years, we might have a form of propulsion or just some way of getting what we want to get our tender little bodies off the Earth to another star. I think you understand. Even if you don't fully agree with me, because you know that we want to and we kind of have to, or we're just not ever going to do anything, I feel that too. But as a scientist, you have to be logical. And it's impossible to leave this solar system. We never will. But we can see that it's there, and we are blueprinted to want to understand it. So how do we go about that? See, this is leaving Earth, and that is how I orient my time on Earth. In the last decade of my life, I've been after this for over a decade, and I intend to continue doing this because this is what I want, to understand cosmic space. Now, when I say cosmic space now, it's not just outer space. It's not just the stellar level, the galactic level, the supergalactic level, and then the cosmic level, the whole thing, which is very difficult to quantify because we have not found an edge. And we've also found things that are outside the standard model of the universe. So our cosmology is wrong. It always has been. We don't know what the universe is yet, but we have a lot more knowledge. And redshift is the single most important discovery in cosmology. It basically revived cosmology, whereas before the redshift was discovered. This is cosmological redshift, which is simply a direct relationship between the distance of cosmic objects, such as galaxies are typical. Galaxies fill the universe. And by measuring them further and further away, a direct relationship exists between the redshift and the distance. And that is the latest and final definition on the cosmic distance ladder. That has been challenged. There is something called the supernova type 1a relationship, which is thought to show something about space-time. I have not fully studied that, but it is accepted. But then you have to remember it's being accepted by a cartel that already has accepted a certain axiomatic basis for looking at the universe, which is based 100% on exactly one measurement: redshift. In order to get to the other topic, just to let you know where this is going, we're going to be talking about imaginary space, which may sound spooky. At this phase of science, cosmological science, we're already talking spooky. And Albert Einstein is the one who introduced the German word spook into our vocabulary in science. He called the collapse of the wave function spukhafte Fernwirkungen. He says spukhafte Fernwirkungen, which means spooky action at a distance. And what he meant by that was the apparent collapse of the wave function, which I've already taught you, but I'll again define it when I'm finished with my sentence in case you're not sure what that means, the collapse of the wave function. I claim that that is one of the two easiest ways to understand the quantum paradox. But the collapse of the wave function, which is basically when a light wave reaches its destination, either on a photographic plate or in your eye or on some measuring device, even if it's light from a very distant star or galaxy, it is a spherical wave function. That is well known. It was proved by Christian Huygens, who lived contemporary. He was a contemporary of Newton. So he lived contemporaneously with Newton and Leibniz. And while Newton basically knew that, or could show, that light consists of corpuscles, which is a synonym for particles, and Einstein would later show that indeed they can be considered particles, the concept of a photon has validity. But that is not ever what a photon is. And that is simply paradoxical. Because as a wavefront goes out, which is what light is in free space, it's a wavefront, not a particle. But when it arrives, it's a particle again. And the transition from the wave state to the particle state occurs in literally no time at all, and it violates special relativity and therefore general relativity because it violates light speed. It's a perceptual violation of light speed, which Einstein has already proven, or already proved, cannot happen. Nothing can go faster than light. But in the collapse of the wave function, it has very recently, this took decades to penetrate to any degree, and it was John S. Bell who resumed the ability to probe this paradox. The Copenhagen theorem of quantum mechanics is you will never understand it, and therefore it's best just to serve the government, serve the industry, and continue to study quantum mechanics to get a weapon, a new level of power beyond fusion power. That is what is being sought. But that's not for understanding. That is for politics. So that's why the governments, which is basically the richest government now, is the United States government. I don't have a political platform. I have none. I don't do politics at all. I'll comment on it because it needs some comment, but I don't study it or care about it because it's not reality. It's the other side of reality that we have to deal with as humans, which has to do with, and I'm sorry to have to tell you this, it has to do with sin and evil. And if you're not acquainted with those, don't worry about it. I'm not here to tell you about sin and evil. But you have to use those words if you're going to make any kind of rational sense out of the desire of the group mind of humans, whether it's the United States or the entire world or Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia or whatever you think Putin represents, or North Korea or China or Israel or anybody, or the Islamic nations or anybody else. What they're after is not understanding, okay? They're not out to save anything except their own asses. That's the only reason the Earth is still intact. After the Tsar Bomba in 1960, the two superpowers called it off. Not for the military-industrial complex in either nation. That will never stop. But the permission from above, whatever is above humans, some spirit, whether you think it's just, whatever you think about it, there's something that told both the United States, that is the Pentagon, and Moscow, you're never going to use those goddamned fusion bombs because it will blow up the Godfathers. There won't be any more, whores and booze and slaves. There won't be any more whores, booze, and slaves for the Godfathers that control the earth. That's just a fact of life. I didn't make that up. But that is what drives science. But that's not what we're after as humans. So that is quite an existential split. And you can either treat that like, I think I'll take the point of view of Saint Mother Teresa and just help the poor and do nothing else except help the oppressed people. Just become like Greg Mortensen, the greatest American hero of all time, who made peace between the United States and basically the Islam nations. How did he do that? He went into their country at the risk of his life and built hundreds of schools for girls and little children, which is the only way to change a society. He claims, and I believe he's right, well, the United States government crucified him morbidly and miserably, and that's why you've never heard his name, or if you have, you won't find his name anymore. He's been crucified because he tried to help the Islam people. But you can go that way. You could be like Jesus. You could be like St. Francis of Assisi or Albert Schweitzer. You could be like Mother Teresa. You can become a monk. You can do whatever you want. You can just practice peace and put on a red or white robe and hang out in airports or go door to door, tell people about Jesus or whatever you think. But that's not science. That's you in your spare time. Here, in my classroom, you're gonna be fucking rigorously logical with no exceptions. And so if somebody with a PhD, I don't care if you have 10 PhDs, 2 Nobel Prizes, and your IQ is 800. If you say that the universe is expanding, I am gonna crack you down. For the sake of my students and myself, for the sake of truth, for the sake of wisdom, and for the sake of science. You cannot make something up. There is a way you can get away with that because we're always pushing the envelope. That doesn't give you liberty to say that your theory has to be true just because you say so. And you have some mathematics to back it up. Oh, really? So what is it you say about the universe? What is the current cosmology of our top-notch scientists? The universe is expanding. Space itself is expanding. Since all the galaxies are moving away from each other, it is thought, there's no proof of that, except the redshift. Is that what the redshift shows? No. That is not what the redshift shows. It might if it's Doppler shift. It's not Doppler shift, and that's what we're going to talk about today, so that you know. It's not a choice between the Big Bang and some other theory. The Big Bang is not a theory. It's a completely unqualified guess based on one extremely tenuous assumed relationship. That the linear relationship between redshift and distance of cosmic objects is due to a special property of space, that space is expanding. That makes no sense. And we covered that in several lectures. And now it's up to me, and Wikipedia points the finger right at me, and I have to agree. I have a caveat, but actually de facto, what I have to do now is give you the actual meaning behind the redshift. And you can look around. You can look, I dare you to find some other interpretation of the redshift besides recessional velocity. That means that space itself is expanding. I say bullshit. But no matter how I say that, with swear words, with invective, with raising my voice, or pointing the finger in any direction, that is not science. The only way to break this spell, and it is Halloween, so I can say spell. The only way to break this spell is with rational logic. It is ostensibly a rational, logical connection that has been made. This is the reason that this theory is taught as fact in all the universities, in all the schools, just following right in the footsteps of natural selection. You made a guess, there is no other guess, and you have some flimsy evidence that cannot be established, but nothing else can be established either. Therefore, amoebas became humans. Period. And just one word defines that. Evolution. Is it scientific? It's anti-scientific, and that is now known because we have the DNA structure. There's no such thing as transmutation of species. They're locked codes. But that leads to, where do humans come from then? Where does the ecology come from? I'm not going to touch on that subject now because it's in previous lectures, and if you're curious, I will direct you to those lectures. I am a priest, so I will tell you the truth about your origins, because you have to know. Those are the two questions. Where is the ecology from, including humans? That means the Earth and everything on it that's alive. Where did that come from? Okay, and the other question is, now, where did this cosmos come from? Since there is a theory, and it has been touted as absolute law of God, except they say, with it, it's not God. And a compromise was tried. The Catholic Church, under Pope Pius XII, officially blessed the Big Bang because it's the only theory that suggests that the Genesis record might be true about in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I'll tell you what these men actually know about that, including the Pope. Nothing. And how can I say that so confidently? It's not science. You can't talk about God in science. And so Georges Lemaitre advised Pope Pius XII, don't go there. Just because, and Georges Lemaitre was a physicist, but he was also a Catholic priest, and he had an audience with the Pope back in 1952, the early 1950s, because the Pope went on record. Not officially, not like while he was eating the Eucharist or however they consecrate their own stuff, but just because he's the Pope. He said that the Big Bang is scriptural. And what he meant was, compared with anything else, in other words, Sir Fred Hoyle's steady state theory, which is even, if anything, it's even worse than the Big Bang. The Big Bang is, now when I say that it's a legitimate theory, I'm saying that condescendingly and retrospectively, retroactively. It is considered to be a qualified theory. I can tell you that no, it's not even that. It's just like natural selection. There is no evidence at all. Now, in the case of natural selection, we know that now, but I have to be honest in science. It's actually not the same thing with the Big Bang. There is a possibility that it's true. And I'll go out even further. Not just lately, but I've been reconsidering where would the universe come from if it came from somewhere? Was it always this big? Well, we can easily imagine, since it's expanding, they say, well, then it in the past was not as big. Or you could say it's not as dense. And that's how Sir Roger Penrose addresses it. He takes the Big Bang Theory at its word and basically executes a reductio ad absurdum proof. That if you want the Big Bang to be true, Sir Roger says, okay, let's assume that it is true. What happens next? And he got it. He extrapolated logically. He is a Nobel Prize winner, so this man is no slouch, okay? He's 91 years old and he's still alive. Sir Roger Penrose, one of my heroes. He also has the right attitude, he's written 2 books on artificial consciousness to show that that's horseshit. And that's in a sea of just mania right now. But as far as cosmological expansion goes, what really is being said, if you could say it rationally at all, is that the density of the universe is becoming less and less with time. If recessional velocity is the correct interpretation of redshift, then that implies that the further out an object is, the more it's speeding away from us, which would be whatever reference frame. Ours happens to be Earth. But this would be true of anywhere, any other planet, any other position. If you take the same readings to get the redshift, progressively further out, spherically in all directions equally, or you should say equivalently, in all directions, the further away that galaxy is, the more apparent recessional velocity it has. And that's a more accurate term, and they never say apparent recessional velocity. They always say recessional velocity as if that were an established fact. It is not an established fact. And I've gone over this in previous lectures, but let me just summarize why that is not a dead certainty. It's because it's based purely on sound wave analogy. That a sound wave in an atmosphere, in a medium, propagates in such a way that you can measure basically the redshift of sound. and you know the train analogy, so I'm not going to repeat that. You know that sound waves will pile up if the generating source of the sound waves is moving toward you. It has a velocity toward you. Then as the sound waves propagate, they pile up. That increases the frequency of the sound wave, which is why it sounds high-pitched, relatively high-pitched, as the train is approaching. And as soon as it passes you, the opposite effect takes effect, and you get redshift. The approaching sound waves pile up and have higher and higher frequency as the train has higher and higher velocity. Well, as the train then speeds away from you, assuming it's at a uniform rate, but this works whether it's accelerating or not, it just changes the formula a little. The waves are not piling up, they're actually pulled apart. And if you think of those waves as being pulled apart, is what happening the expansion of the atmosphere? No. But it's a decrease in the density of the waves. That's why it sounds low-pitched as the train is going away. So I hope that all makes sense. I don't want to go into this in too great detail because all of this is well known. What is not so well known is what I want you to concentrate on with me right now, is that light is not propagating through a medium. It used to be thought that it was, and that was called the ether. Well, that does not exist. There is no ether. That's easily demonstrated by some you need some pretty good technology to do these experiments, but there is no ether. Because we can check as the Earth is going this way, right? And then it goes around the sun, and then it comes back around. Now it's going this way. So you can use these two directions of the Earth on opposite sides of the sun. Make your diameter so you have, they're at polar opposites. So the Earth is going this way here, but it's going this way here, and measure the light, the same light. Can't be at the same moment. It has to be 180 days later. But when you do that, you can check to see if there's ether, in the sense that the Earth would be moving through the ether. There is none. And therefore, light does not propagate the same way as sound. The similarity is there, though. They're both wavefronts. And they do similar things, such as diffraction. And you know about the double slit experiment for light. It clearly shows that light propagates as a wave, just as Christian Huygens said. But then there's equally, and unfortunately it is equally true, that it's not propagating just as a wave. It's also propagating as a particle. And that just mesmerizes scientists, including myself, and Richard Feynman, Albert Einstein, Bohr, Schrödinger, Dirac, Planck, everybody. When we look at this, our jaws just drop. Because it can't be both a particle and a wave. Because a wave is what's called an extended object. It's like the difference between a galaxy and a star. A star is a luminous object. A galaxy is a luminous object. But when you look at a star, it's just a particle. Basically, it's a great big particle. Compared with a galaxy, which is about 100 billion light points, which are extremely sparse. But at a distance, it looks like a spiral of light. That's why we couldn't figure out if it was made of stars or not. You can't see the separate stars until you get a powerful enough telescope. That galaxy, in relation to the stars that are in it, the stars are objects. They're called by various names to identify them basically as particles, okay? Very large particles. You just think of it that way because of the alternative. What's a galaxy? It's called an extended object. Now think of the particle, or, what we would say is a photon is a particle. Einstein proved that and got the Nobel Prize for it at a certain moment in its life. It sure looks like it's got to be a particle. But at no other time is it a particle. Except that's actually incorrect. It's very, very difficult to talk about. We're going to disambiguate that today. But that's 40 minutes. We'll be back. This is Halloween. I've had, I hope, a humorous introduction. I'm going to piece these together so you have kind of a humorous introduction to this. Because it's a lighthearted day. We are human. This is not supposed to be work. It's not dreadful. We're not like, oh, God, it's back to the science again. No. This is the most fun that a human being can have. I live that truth. I am the happiest man that I know. But it is rigorous. You cannot guess. You have to know. And if you're trying to understand the universe and you want to know something, you're going to get it from me, because I do know. To a new threshold, it doesn't mean I'm a know-it-all. But compared with popular science out on the internet, what these government slaves are working on, they simply are not allowed to do what I do. I'm a free man. I'm not paid. And I don't want your money. I'm not trying to snow you to get something out of you. What I want out of you, do I get something out of this by doing this for you? Yes, I believe I will. For the same reason that Mother Teresa served those little children and lepers in the black hole of Calcutta, God bless her forever and ever. But I am like the little drummer boy. I have no gift to bring. I can't help my fellow Americans that way. They'd slit my throat if I started giving money to hobos. They're not like those innocents in Calcutta. The hobos in America, the destitute people of America, have themselves to blame. 99%. I don't need to be Mother Teresa. I wasn't called to that. I was called to wisdom. And if you don't like that, you're a monkey. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. I'm a lighthearted man. We're going to have fun, but we are going to get this right. I already have. I'm going to share it with you. So put up with me. I'll be sedated somewhat by the time I turn this video recorder back on. Let me just recall to mind here, I'm dying. I will not live out this year except by some miracle. And I'm enlisted to science. I do have the right stuff. I am serious. And I'm going to kick these bastards' asses before I die. I have a vendetta against lying scientists. We're supposed to be priests.